Iran saying it's responding to U.S. and Israeli strikes with what it calls, quote, the most intense operation of the conflict so far, launching advanced ballistic missiles toward Tel Aviv as the war enters its 12th day now. Tensions also rising in the Persian Gulf, where at least 3 ships were attacked near the Strait of Hormuz, that narrow passage where about 20% of the world's oil moves through every day. The U.S. military saying that it destroyed 16 Iranian mine layers, several naval vessels in those waters as well. And across the region, hundreds have been killed, more than 1,200 in Iran alone. 7 American service members have also died in the conflict. 140 American troops have been wounded. Here tonight to talk about this growing conflict, its impact in Washington and across not just the nation but the world, is Washington Congressman Adam Smith. Thanks for being with us. We appreciate it.
Thanks, Joyce. Thanks.
I know you're in town for just a week, so we appreciate you stopping by. Let's first talk about the mission. The president has laid out mixed messages about what the mission in Iran is. As you understand it, what is it?
Well, it can be divided into 2 parts, and he bounces back and forth on which part he's focused on. One is to weaken Iran's capacity, military capacity, their navy, their air force, their missiles, their drones, and crucially their capacity to rebuild all that, so their industrial capacity. And that's a big part of the focus. Now, the problem with that is we're making progress on it, but they got a lot of missiles, and they've got a lot of capacity. And also, even if we're successful, they will likely rebuild, which brings us to the second part of the mission, which is the hope to either do regime change and get rid of the regime completely, or change their behavior, make them less belligerent towards the region and less belligerent towards the U.S. And there is no evidence that we're making any progress whatsoever towards that goal. So no matter how much we degrade what they're doing, their ability to rebuild it and maintain the same hostile attitude towards us in the region seems pretty high. And then the third piece, which isn't talked, is the cost of this. And you mentioned, we've 7 service members killed, somewhere around 150 wounded. Thousands of civilians have been killed. The impact on the global economy, the impact on the Middle East economy, and it's something like 14 different countries now that have been dragged into this conflict. The cost of this is rising. Why the benefit seems to be less and less clear as we move through now, as you said, 12 days of war.
On regime change, we know that Ayatollah's son is now in control. And when it comes to part of the mixed message on messaging, getting rid of the nuclear weapons, for example, we know that Iran has this stockpile of enriched uranium underground, which then leads to this idea that can you really get rid of that uranium, which is used to make nuclear bombs, without putting troops on the ground?
Yeah, no is the answer to that question. And thus far in this campaign, there hasn't even been an effort for the air campaign to target the nuclear programs from Iran. And look, that's what I've really been explaining to people is that on the Armed Services Committee, I've been getting briefs on this for like 15 years now. Iran is clearly a problem. They're building up their ballistic missile capability. They're destabilizing the region. Death to Israel, death to America is a cornerstone of what they're doing. They have been flirting with a nuclear program and building towards it. And it was, okay, well, what are the military options for stopping that threat? And what we saw was an air campaign can have a limited effect in terms of actually stopping all of those bad things from happening. There are other less costly ways to contain it. Now, it is true, those other less costly ways to contain it will not eliminate it. But my argument always was, nor will a military campaign, and that military campaign will come at a much, much higher cost.
We're also hearing reports that Russia is actively helping Iran with targeting of U.S. targets like bases, planes, etc. What can you tell us about that, as we have now seen the president in just this last week ease sanctions against Russia?
Yeah. Iran, Russia, China, and even North Korea have all been working more closely together over the years preceding this war in a variety of different ways. They've formed a partnership basically against the U.S., our interests, and our allies. Now, it's not like a formal alliance or anything, but they have a shared interest in weakening us, so they have been working together. You see Iran provided drones to Russia in their war against Ukraine. So I have no doubt that Russia is trying to help Iran in that way, and it's to be expected. And now, they're not that capable in terms of what they can provide, but it's still a problem. But the bigger problem is the second thing you said, is lifting the sanctions on Russian oil. And the reason the President Trump has done that is because oil prices are going to Pluto, and he's trying to get it under control. He wants to flood the market with whatever oil is available. Problem with that is he gives a lifeline to Putin. And let's not forget Ukraine. And the Ukrainians are fighting very effectively right now. They're actually regaining territory because of how much they've been able to weaken Russia. But you give Russia a whole bunch of more oil revenue, that could potentially prolong that war and also prolong the war in the Middle East.
You brought up oil, the Strait of Hormuz. There are at least 2, reportedly in the last few hours, new tanker fires off the coast of Iraq, in addition to the 3 fires in the Strait of Hormuz. Hundreds of ships are backed up and cannot pass. The president said in Kentucky today that the war is won. Can you win the war when the Strait of Hormuz is closed?
No, and if the war is won, why is it still going on? And that's part of the problem. I mean, President Trump's inability to speak clearly and honestly with the American people has always been a problem. But in the middle of a war, it's embarrassing and a major, major problem. The war is won. What the hell does that even mean? All right,
it certainly makes the stock market go up and down.
Yeah, it has that effect.
Day.
It doesn't change what's going on with the actual conflict. And look, Iran has a very straightforward philosophy. They are going to up the pain of this thing. And if they can shut down commerce coming in and out of the Strait of Hormuz, that ups the pain significantly, and they can, and they have.
What's the long-term impact of that? Because as you all know at home, you're already feeling the price of oil going up with the strait closed. The barrel is up, I think, $50 since this started.
Yeah.
$50 a barrel. And so, I mean...
Well, there was one estimate that it could lower the GDP globally by 2% if this war persists. And the thing to understand is, it's not like an on-off switch. So basically, this war has shut down oil production or the ability to ship oil out of the Middle East, shut it down. So, their storage facilities are backing up, so then they got to shut down production because they got nowhere to put what they're producing. And you don't just flip the switch back on once the war stops. So it's going to have not just weeks, but months of impact on the economy.
And not just oil.
Yeah, not just oil, because oil is, you got to ship stuff. So, and also fertilizer comes out of the Middle East, so that ups the price of food. But oil energy costs are a core part of many businesses, so it's going to up the cost of food and other things as well. This is incredibly destabilizing, and again, it's a war we didn't need to fight that isn't going to accomplish the really serious objectives of fundamentally changing Iranian behavior. We will weaken Iran. For how long? Hard to say, and it comes at such an incredible cost. This is why we should have learned the lessons of the last 25 years in all the wars we fought. War may seem seductively simple when you're looking at it before you fight it. It never is.
I have 2 questions I really want to get in before
Sure.
they give me a wrap.
Okay.
One is we're hearing about threats on the West Coast from drones, potentially from Iran, from boats in the waters. What are you hearing about those threats?
I have not heard anything. I don't have specific information. I've heard the reports that came out of the FBI and the Department of Defense. I have not received specific information. Okay. It's logical to assume that Iran would try to have. We're hitting them all over the country. It's
so we're paying attention to that.
Yeah, absolutely.
And then finally, are Americans more safe or less safe since this war started?
They're unquestionably less safe. I mean, yes, I know Iran was a problem, but Iran was not day in and day out, or even every few months, targeting Americans. They were causing all kinds of problems, but they weren't targeting Americans. Now they are, and also Americans in that region are in the crosshairs of this war. And you've also seen there was the guy lobbing the bomb at Mamdani's house in New York.
Domestic issues.
In Oslo, there was an attack on the embassy. We're less safe right now.
I'm out of time. That's unnerving, though. Thank you so much, Congressman, for being with us. We really appreciate it. And hope to have you back the next time you're in town. Thank you.
Thanks for the chance.